Hey guys, tonight we're traveling somewhere warm, ancient, and utterly timeless. The hills of northern Sicily rise around you in muted green, dotted with wildflowers and old stone walls. The air is scented with crushed rosemary and distant brine. There's a hush in the olive groves, as if even the trees are holding their breath, waiting for the sun to rise. You don't know how you got here. One moment, you were drifting into sleep, and the next, you're blinking under an almond tree with the rustle of tunics and sandals around you. A man with a sun-leathered face and kind eyes leans over you. His Latin is slow and melodic as he asks if you're the new seasonal help. Before you can answer, your stomach rumbles audibly. So much for explanations. Venistia tempus, he chuckles. You've arrived just in time. Just try not to invent electricity by accident. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. He helps you to your feet, handing you a weathered goatskin flask of water, cool, faintly metallic. You drink deeply, and something in your chest loosens. You're led down a dirt path bordered with rows of ancient olive trees, their knotted trunks like sleeping elders. Small green fruits dangle in clusters. Bees drift lazily in and out of yellow blossoms. The land undulates gently. Off in the distance, a faint blue smudge of sea. Closer by, low stone walls separate plots where wheat rustles and donkeys nudge dusty carts. The Villa Rustica, the working farmhouse, comes into view, white plastered walls with terracotta tile roofs, a pergola heavy with grapevines, and smoke curling from a chimney. The steward calls out to a younger man who arrives with a bundle of linen and gestures for you to follow. Your clothes well. What passed for clothes in your sleep are deemed unacceptable. You're led around to the side of the villa where a small bathhouse or balneum sits in the shade. Sits in. Steam rises from a marble basin. A woman hands you a rough woven sponge soaked in lavender water. Purge the old world, she says, in Greek-accented Latin. You're not sure if it's a metaphor or just a bath time phrase, but you obey. The water is warm, softening the dust from your skin. Beeswax soap leaves you smelling faintly of honey and something medicinal. You're scrubbed, toweled, and fitted with a knee-length tunic of bleached linen, cinched with a rope belt. Calf-high sandals are strapped on. You study yourself in a burnished bronze mirror. You look not bad, like someone who harvests olives and eats dates from a pouch. You're shown a bed for the night, simple straw mattress, wool blanket, and a clay oil lamp flickering in the corner. No one asks your name yet. Here, your hands are your introduction. If you work, you belong. At dusk, you sit with a few other workers on the steps near the olive press. Someone passes a bowl of barley stew with lentils. Another passes a cup of watered wine. They speak of the harvest coming early this year, of the landowner's son in Syracuse who wants to study rhetoric but can't grow a fig. You smile. It all flows around you like the warm breeze. A boy no older than 10 offers you a roasted chestnut and points to the moon. Diana will chase wolves tonight, he says. A superstition or a story hard to tell? You think about your old world. Streetlights, toothpaste, Endless noise. You don't miss it as much as you expected. The moon rises. Somewhere far off, a goat bleats. You lie on your back in the straw, listening to the cicadas and the wind through olive branches.
It's not perfect, that, but it feels unhurried. Maybe even good.
And as your eyes close, you wonder how many lives the land beneath you has lived. You wake to the sound of cooing doves and the clink of ceramic against stone. Morning comes early here, not with alarms, but with a slow, inevitable bloom of sunlight over the hills. Someone's sweeping the courtyard with a bundle of reeds, and from somewhere in the kitchen wing, the scent of baking barley bread floats across the air like a promise. Your limbs are stiff but rested, and the straw mattress was scratchy but warm, and the wool blanket still holds your shape like a cocoon. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and for a moment you forget the world you came from. There are no clocks ticking, no phones buzzing, just the gentle rhythm of another Roman day beginning. The steward, his name is Lucius. You learned yesterday, greets you with a nod and a half smile. Bene dormisti, he asks. Slept well? You nod. Language is less of a barrier than you expected. Maybe this world doesn't expect you to explain everything. You're handed a warm cloth and a bowl of water infused with mint. You wash your face and hands beneath the fig tree, then follow the others toward the bathhouse again. Cleanliness isn't a luxury here, it's a routine, ritual, even. Inside the small balneum, the steam clings to your skin, and there's no luxury here, no mosaic fountains or marble pillars like in the city villas, but it's dignified, a stone basin of rainwater, warmed by the previous day's sun, awaits. You dip your hands in, cup the water, and splash it over your face, feeling the last of your old world residue drip down the drain. A younger worker, maybe 16, hands you a fresh tunic, and this one smells faintly of laurel and something like clean hay. It's a good smell. He introduces himself as Silvanus. You're lucky, he says, in slow Latin. The last person to arrive this late in the season got stuck cleaning chamber pots. You raise an eyebrow, and he grins. I'm only half joking. You're shown how to wrap and fasten your sandals more securely. Double knot, Silvanus advises, unless you want to rock in your foot halfway up the terraces. Before you leave the villa's grounds, Lucius pauses beside you at the gate. He points to a carved lintel above the archway. It's a worn inscription in Latin, vita, rustica, est vita, bona. Rural life is a good life. He doesn't wait for you to respond, just walks on, expecting you to follow.
And you do.
The sky is pale blue now, with wisps of thin clouds like threads of wool stretched across a loom. You take in the estate again, this time with clearer eyes. Chickens cluck behind a reed fence. 2 goats are trying to ignore each other near a fig tree. A cart creaks past, drawn by a sleepy-eyed donkey that seems to be moving out of pure habit. The tool shed smells of iron, oil, and cedar. You're handed a pair of curved iron shears, worn smooth at the handle, and a long-handled hook. You'll be helping with the pruning, says Lucius. Don't worry, the trees will forgive you. And they do seem forgiving, in a way. The olive grove stretches over a gentle slope down toward the valley. The trees aren't tall, but they're ancient trunks, twisted like braids, bark like cracked leather. Some are older than Rome itself, or so the gardener claims. Their roots claw deep into the earth, sipping moisture from hidden places even the sun can't reach. Your job is to trim the smaller wild branches that sap strength from the fruiting limbs. Silvanus shows you how to do it gently, never hacking. Always coaxing, like giving them a haircut, he says, a very slow one, once a year. You work in silence at first, listening to the rhythmic snip of shears, the occasional call of a hoopoe bird, and the distant splash of water in the irrigation channel. It's not hard work, but it's deliberate, focused, the kind of work that tells your body it belongs in time again. A few hours pass like this. The sun rises higher. Bees hum around tiny white blossoms. You pause to drink from your flask rainwater, caught and stored in clay jars. It tastes a little like dust and sky. Nearby, an older woman named Tertia is gathering dry twigs in a woven basket. She waves you over and points at the ground beneath one of the trees. Always check under the northern side, she says. That's where the wind hides the best kindling.
As you kneel to collect the scattered wood, she continues, my grandmother said olive trees remember who was kind to them. That's why I always greet them before I work. She pats a trunk, murmurs something under her breath, and winks at you. Couldn't hurt, eh?
You give it a try, just a quiet hello, in your own language, and, for a moment, you think the tree sighs, or maybe that's just the breeze. There's a piece to it, a rhythm. You begin to understand why no one here seems in a rush. Even the sun moves more slowly, taking its time across the sky. And as you work, sweat forming at your temples, you find yourself wondering what someone from this world would think of yours, of electric lights, of breakfast cereal, of endless scrolling. Would they laugh, or would they ask you why anyone would ever trade olive trees for glass screens?
It's a good question there.
By late morning, the grove is alive with quiet labor. The click of pruning shears mingles with the rustle of linen and the dull thud of cut branches dropping to the earth. Your hands are beginning to ache, not painfully, just enough to remind you that you are, indeed, working in the year 100 BCE. Silvanus shows you how to carry the trimmed branches to a sorting area where they're bundled into kindling or stacked for later chipping. Nothing is wasted, he says. Even the smallest twig burns clean in winter. You pause to tie a bundle with coarse twine. The rope bites into your palm, but you don't mind. There's something grounding in it, this daily repetition, this simple barter of time for usefulness. It's the kind of satisfaction no app has ever given you. Don't drop the bundles like that, Tertia calls out gently. They'll bruise the olives. You hadn't realized some of the fruit was still clinging to the branches' early droppers, shriveled but still useful for oil. You nod an apology and adjust your grip. Nearby, a younger girl, barely 10, gathers stray olives in a basket, humming a tune that sounds like water and wind braided into melody.
Her name is Livia, Silvanus says quietly. She's not supposed to be working, but she says the trees talk less when she sings to them.
You smile. You believe it. Around midday, Lucius calls for a break. You all make your way to the edge of the grove, where a flat rock juts out under a cluster of pine. It's cool there, shaded, and the view stretches far across the valley fields in quilt-like patterns. A ribbon of road curling toward the coast, and in the distance, the shimmer of the Tyrrhenian Sea, dazzling and blue. You sit on the grass, the scent of crushed fennel rising around you, and accept the woven pouch passed your way. Inside barley bread, firm and nutty, a handful of wrinkled black olives steeped in oil and thyme, and a square of white goat cheese wrapped in fig leaves. You bite into the bread and let it sit on your tongue. It's dry but satisfying. The olives are briny and rich, bursting against your teeth like tiny, sun-soaked secrets. There's wine, too, in a clay cup, passed from hand to hand, thin and tart, watered down to avoid sleepiness. Lucius lounges against a tree trunk, gesturing with a twig as he talks about the landowner, Gaius Marcellus. He visits maybe twice a year, Lucius says, sends letters the rest of the time, always asking about production, never about the trees themselves.
Someone snorts. He thinks oil comes from the villa like wine comes from Bacchus.
There's laughter. The tone here is teasing, not bitter. These people know the land better than any absent patrician. They know its moods, its needs, its silences. You chew your last olive and listen as the conversation meanders from weather to rumours from Rome to who might be stealing pomegranates from the orchard. Livia insists it's the magpies. Tertia insists it's Sylvanus, whose ears go slightly pink. There's a kind of peace in this shared pause. No one checks a clock. No one seems in a rush to return. The grove is still, and the breeze is kind. For a moment, you lean back, close your eyes, and imagine your old world fading like smoke. You're startled by the sudden plop of a fig landing beside you. Livia grins from a low branch. "Catch next time," she says. They're sweeter when they fall. Sylvanus helps you up, brushing fig sap from your shoulder. "Come," he says. "You've seen the trees. Now let me show you what they become." You follow a narrow footpath that curves past the vineyard and a small apiary whitewashed beehive surrounded by wildflowers until you reach the torcularium, the olive press. It's a squat stone building with open sides and a sloped floor, stained dark from decades of oil and pulp. Inside, the centerpiece is the press itself, a massive wooden beam, smoothed by time and use, supported by stone posts, and works with a screw mechanism carved from oak, turned slowly by hand or mule. Nearby, baskets of crushed olives, pommets. You learn weight under layered mats of woven grass. Boy feeds them one by one into the press, stacking the discs like a patient game. With each turn of the screw, thick, greenish liquid oozes down into a collecting basin. "It's not the first pressing," Sylvanus says, "but it's still sweet oil, good for eating. The later pressings are for lamps." You watch fascinated. It's messy, laborious, oddly beautiful. The smell sharp, earthy, almost fruity, sticks to your skin like incense. Someone hands you a wooden ladle. "Taste?" he asks. You dip it into a small clay bowl and lift it to your lips. The oil is warm from friction, grassy and pungent, with a peppery aftertaste that dances at the back of your throat. You nod. "Good," you say. The man grins. Good, he echoes. It's the sun, pressed into liquid. Later, as the light begins to change and the hills blush with shadow, you sit beside the press and watch the oil settle in its vat. The foam rises, the sediment sinks. Even the liquid knows where to rest. You think again about your other life, how much of it was built on speed, not rhythm. Here, time stretches and breathes. It doesn't chase you. It waits for you to catch up.
And maybe, just maybe, you will.
The day mellows as you return to the grove, the sun leaning westward, casting long shadows across the rows of olive trees. Everything is touched by gold, the stone walls, the leaves that shimmer silver green, even the linen of your tunic. It's that hour when the world feels suspended, like a held breath before dusk arrives. You settle on a low bench beneath a tree whose trunk coils like an old dancer's limbs. Around you, others gather for prandium. The midday meal, though it feels more like a picnic than anything formal, everyone brings something small, wrapped in cloth or carried in baskets. The variety is modest, but the spirit of it feels luxurious. A young woman named Flavia sits beside you and hands you a palm leaf parcel. Inside are salted lupins and honeyed almonds. "Trade you for a fig," she says, eyeing the one tucked in your pouch from earlier. You oblige, and she smiles. "Fair," she declares, taking a tiny, triumphant bite. Someone passes around fresh, soft cheese, still cool from being hung in a shaded cellar. Someone else offers a twist of dried herbs, oregano, sage, something minty, crushed into oil on a slice of bread. You try it. It tastes like sun-warmed stone and a hint of forest. As everyone eats, they talk. Not about productivity or goals or strategies, but about the texture of this year's barley, the sudden rise in bees, the odd shape of a new calf's horns. The details of life so often filtered out in your old world are front and center here. "You hear everything," Flavia says, "when you're quiet long enough," and she tosses an almond at Silvanus, who's nearly dozed off against a tree trunk. He grunts in mock offense and flicks a pebble back at her. You smile. It's all so wonderfully unurgent. A breeze stirs through the branches, and you catch the faint scent of something unfamiliar, smoke, but sweet. Lucius follows your nose and says, "They're burning laurel downwind. For the beehives, keeps the wasps away." You file that away. Another small, ancient logic at work. The older woman, Tertia, tells a story of how, when she was a girl, they believed that olives picked under a full moon would yield oil that cured fevers. "We don't believe that anymore," she says, "but sometimes I still wait for the moon, just in case." You ask if the trees really can remember who's kind to them. She chuckles. "They remember what you forget. That's close enough." Silvanus leans toward you. "Did she also tell you the one about the goat who predicted earthquakes?" Tertia smacks his shoulder with a fig leaf and declares the topic closed. You think back to your own world, where breaks are timed and lunch is something grabbed, not shared. Here, the time between tasks is treated as a gift, not a weakness. A moment for digestion, not just of food, but of thought. You watch as Livia plucks grass stems and braids them into a tiny crown. She places it gently on the head of the sleeping donkey beside her. No one laughs. It's not silly here, it's just what one does on a warm afternoon under the trees. After a while, Flavia produces a lyre from beneath a basket and begins to pluck its strings softly. The melody is simple, circular, comforting. A tune, she says, that her grandmother sang while pressing oil. It repeats, like the press itself, always turning, always returning. As the music flows around you, you lean back against the tree and let your eyes close, just for a moment. The dappled light dances on your face. You can hear your own breath, slow and steady, syncing with the rhythm of the land. And in that moment, you wonder not for the first time if anyone in your world would recognize this kind of wealth. Not gold or marble or conquest, but this a full stomach, good shade, and the laughter of people who've never heard of urgency. A grasshopper lands on your knee, Guas, you nod to it, as if to say, yes, this is a fine life. Soon! Lucius rises and brushes his hands. Back to it, he says, not with command, but like a suggestion. People rise slowly, not sluggish, but savouring. No one complains. You don't either. As you stand, you notice the way the grove seems different now. The sun has shifted. The trees have adjusted. The world has nudged forward just a little. Everything's the same, but nothing is quite identical. Like turning a jar and seeing the oil settle anew.
You follow the others, feet crunching softly on dry soil. Back to the trees, back to the shears, back to the rhythm.
The next task of the day draws you into the villa itself, closer to the household's quiet heart. After a short afternoon of work in the grove, Lucius beckons you toward the central courtyard, nodding toward a bundle of tools that need returning. To the Villa Rustica, he says, and keep your eyes open. The house has its own way of speaking. You hoist the small basket, wooden mallets, shears, spare lengths of cord, and follow the worn stone path that cuts across the estate. Grapevines hang lazily over a trellis to your left, bees dancing among them. The cicadas now buzz louder, as if measuring the heat with each pulse. Passing beneath the archway of the main building, the temperature drops. Cool shade embraces you. Inside, the scent of clay, herbs, and faint smoke from oil lamps hangs in the air. The floors beneath your sandals are made of packed earth and tile, still holding the memory of morning sun. The atrium stretches ahead, an open-roofed room with a shallow basin at the center called an impluvium, used to catch rainwater. It's dry now, save for a curled fig leaf floating on the surface like a lone boat adrift. You're not sure if it fell naturally or someone placed it there for luck. A boy hurries past carrying a ceramic jug nearly as big as he is. He nods at you without slowing, just another part of the intricate machine that keeps the villa turning. To your right, you catch a glimpse of the culina, the kitchen, not grand, but focused. A low fire pit with blackened pots, a rack of herbs drying above, rosemary, bay, rue, and something sharp you can't place. A woman hums a slow tune as she grinds spices with a stone mortar, pausing now and then to blow powdered ash off her fingers. She sees you and gestures toward a wooden hook on the wall. "Hang the rope there," she says. Her Latin is fast but gentle. You obey? And she gives a small nod approval, or perhaps simply acknowledgement. Either feels like progress. The storeroom is next. Lucius meets you there and unlocks a wooden door with a clunky iron key. Inside, rows of amphorae line the walls, each labelled with neat brushstrokes, Latin on one side, Greek on the other. You recognize a few markings: oleum dulce, mel punicum, garum, sweet oil, pomegranate honey, fermented fish sauce. You kneel to place the tools where directed, on a low bench by a stack of firewood. As you rise, your eyes fall on a curious object, a wax tablet etched with numbers and tally marks, probably for inventory. One corner of the tablet is smudged with a tiny fingerprint.
Marcus is learning his letters, Lucius explains, noticing your gaze. He's 5. Thinks every M stands for his name.
You smile. In some ways, that hasn't changed over centuries. Lucius leads you next to the tablinum. The landowner's study currently unoccupied, but preserved like a sacred space. You don't step inside, but you see the low desk, the scroll rack, the ink pots made from hollowed bone. On the wall, a faded mosaic of a dolphin curves elegantly, the colours still catching the light. He writes to Rome from here, Lucius says, boasts about our yield, our weather, our obedient goats. You raise an eyebrow. Lucius chuckles. He's never met the goats. You're led out again into the sunlight, the villa's walls glowing ochre in the late afternoon. From this vantage, you see the layout more clearly now, the central courtyard, the side wings for grain and oil, the humble quarters for workers like you, and the slightly raised pars urbana, a residence for the master and his family, though they're rarely here. You ask Lucius if he's ever wanted to leave, to live in the city. He shakes his head slowly. Once, maybe. But Rome is marble and noise. Here, the land remembers your name. You think about that as you follow the path around the back of the villa. The olive groves still shimmer in the distance, but now you see the hortus. The kitchen garden rows of cabbage, onion, and broad beans, patches of herbs, even a few early squashes. A boy is elbow deep in the soil, humming as he weeds. You catch a few lines. It's the same tune Flavia played earlier, shaped into earth instead of air. Your final errand brings you to a small storeroom where cracked baskets await repair. You set your empty tool basket down, ready to return outside, when a voice behind you says, "Wait."
It's the kitchen woman again. She offers you a folded cloth.
You unwrap it. Inside is a still warm barley cake sweetened with date paste.
"No one works well hungry," she says simply.
You nod your thanks, take a bite, and pause. It's dense, chewy, and delicious, just enough to take the edge off. And the cake reminds you of something from your childhood, though you can't name it. You carry that taste with you as you step back outside, back into the heat and the hum and the scent of crushed thyme underfoot. The villa recedes behind you, quiet and proud. You wonder how many centuries it has stood like this. How many hands have passed through it, unseen and unrecorded. How many lives were etched into its stones like so many tally marks on a wax tablet.
And for the first time, you feel your own name, your own shape, being quietly folded into the rhythm of this place.
As the sun dips lower and the light softens to a honeyed glow, the air cools just enough to stir the olive branches. Long shadows stretch across the grove, and Lucius, squinting at the sky, gives the word to begin evening duties. "Time to press," he says simply. You follow the others toward the torcularium. Again, the pressing house you visited earlier. This time, you're not a curious observer. This time, you're part of the rhythm. The building glows dimly in the late-day light. Clay lamps are being lit along the walls, their flames flickering behind coloured glass, fragments of old bottles melted and reshaped by some creative steward years ago. They throw sleepy hues of blue, amber, and green across the stone floor, as if the room itself were breathing. The olives that were collected during the morning now sit in wide, shallow baskets, waiting their turn. You're guided through the process, scooping the fruit, removing any leaves or stems, and pouring them into a circular stone mill where a large horizontal wheel grinds them into thick, earthy paste. You and another worker take turns pushing the wooden beam that turns the wheel. It creaks and groans like an old storyteller, and the stone beneath your feet is worn smooth from generations of others walking the same slow circle. The paste is then gathered and spread onto woven mats made of esparto grass, circular, scratchy, smelling faintly of dust and sun, and these mats are stacked in a press paste, mat, paste, mat, until the whole column is nearly waist high. Now comes the part you've been anticipating, the turning of the screw. The massive wooden beam looms overhead, held by two upright posts of stone. Its threaded shaft fits into a heavy bronze nut that allows it to descend as it is rotated. You grip the arm and begin to turn. It resists at first, groaning slightly, then begins to move, slow, deliberate. The pressure builds, and the first glistening streams of oil and juice begin to trickle down, dark gold in the fading light. The scent is powerful, green and bitter, like fresh cut grass and unripe apples. You inhale deeply. It smells like work and health, and something older than recipes. First press, says a voice beside you. It's the gardener, old, bent, wrapped in a woolen shawl despite the warmth. That's the one for the gods and the landowners. He chuckles, then coughs into his hand. You offer him a place to sit on a nearby crate. He lowers himself slowly and leans his head back, eyes closed. Been here since I was smaller than a pruning hook, he murmurs. Learned from a Numidian who wore red beads and claimed olive trees were cousins of lions. Never explained what he meant. Just said it like it was obvious. You nod, easing beside him on the crate. The oil continues to drip behind you, rhythmic, like rain. You know, he continues, some folks think olive trees never die, that they just forget how to grow until someone reminds them. He opens one eye and points a gnarled finger. That's your job. Not just trimming branches, reminding. You look around the room. Everyone here moves slowly, carefully, not because they're tired, but because everything matters. Each mat laid straight, each drop of oil caught clean. No one rushes, no one barks orders. The press demands calm, and it gets it. You take your turn turning the screw again. The wood warms under your hands. The sound of the threads moving against each other is satisfying in a way you hadn't expected, like time grinding gently forward. Outside, the sky shifts toward dusk. A soft glow filters in through the open sides of the pressing house. Someone has begun humming low, tuneless, steady. It blends with the sound of the press, the slow exhale of olives giving up their essence. Someone else pours the freshly pressed oil into an amphora using a broad ceramic funnel. The vessel is labelled with a charcoal mark, 3 dots in a triangle. That's the mark for dolce olio. They explain, sweet oil, first press, reserved for the table. You help carry the amphora to a shaded nook where others are cooling. Your arms ache slightly from the work, but it's a good ache earned, not extracted. As you return to the press, the old gardener is still watching. You've got good hands, he says, soft, but willing. Then he squints at you. Not from here, though. Your walk's too quiet. You freeze. But he just shrugs. Doesn't matter. The trees don't mind. He closes his eyes again, letting the smell of oil and dusk fill his lungs. This is a good place to forget where you came from, he adds. Even better if you stop trying to remember.
You think about that.
The light dims further. A young girl lights another oil lamp, holding it carefully as if it contains a baby star. She sets it near the press. Its glow spills across your face. You look down at your tunic, stained now with bits of pulp and a fine dusting of olive skin. Your hands smell of sap and iron. Your shoulders ache, and yet you've never felt cleaner. You take another turn at the press before the day ends. Another few rotations, another few drops of gold.
And as the last light fades, you wonder, not for the first time, if the press remembers every harvest, every hand, every name whispered into the beams. Maybe not.
But you'll remember. The next morning, the grove greets you like an old friend. The air is cool again, just on the edge of dew, and the light filters through the leaves in stripes of gold and grey. But today is different. Lucius assigns you to a new task, not in the grove, but in the villa's gardens, with someone everyone seems to both respect and tiptoe around. Find Marcus the Elder, Lucius says. He'll teach you more than you ask for. You find him where the herbs grow thickest beneath a pair of fig trees near the boundary wall, among neat rows of lavender, rue, and silvery sage. He's small but not frail. His back bent more from habit than weakness. His face is weathered, eyes hidden beneath bushy white brows, and his tunic is patched in places but meticulously clean. He doesn't look up when you arrive, just gestures to a basket at his side. Pick the dry heads of the chamomile, only the dry ones. Wet ones turn bitter. You kneel beside him and begin. The scent of crushed chamomile rises around you, sweet and musty. You work in silence for a while. The sun warms your back. Somewhere behind you, a chicken complains about nothing in particular.
Eventually, he speaks again, voice like cracked bark. These trees here, figs, olives, almonds, they're not Roman, came from Carthage, even before the Greeks. This land remembers before we named it.
You glance up at him. His eyes are still on the plants, but there's a spark there, as if he's seeing something far away. Do you know how to graft, he asks. You shake your head. He clicks his tongue. Then we'll fix that. He leads you to a young olive sapling, thin, green, just beginning its real life. From a basket, he takes a twig of another tree, freshly cut, and shows you how to slice the bark, split it gently, and insert the new branch. This one bore sweeter fruit last season. We borrow its memory and offer it to this one. You wrap the wound in cloth, tie it with string. It feels more like medicine than gardening. The gods do it in myth, Marcus says. We do it with knives and twine. He pauses, sniffs the air. Storm coming in 3 days. Smell the iron. You don't, but nod anyway. He chuckles. Don't lie to an old man. Just listen more. You return to harvesting herbs, pennyroyal, mint, and something called costus, which he says the Egyptians once used in perfume. Each plant, he explains, has its season, its mood, its purpose. Some calm, some wake, some help you speak with the dead. You raise an eyebrow. He doesn't clarify. As you gather time from between stones, he tells you about the land's past, how this villa once belonged to a Greek trader, before the Romans claimed it, how soldiers brought back seeds from Africa and Syria, how the olive trees you pruned yesterday were already ancient when Cicero was born. They've survived droughts, plagues, even stupid owners, he mutters. We're just the current caretakers. At one point, he hands you a small curved knife and shows you how to cut marjoram without bruising the stems. It weeps if you do, he warns, and for a second, you believe him. You pause to sip from your flask and he watches you. You've settled well, he says, but you carry no calluses, no accent, no gods. Odd, that. You stay quiet. He shrugs, as if your mystery is of passing interest. The olives don't care, he says, echoing the gardener from the press. Just don't water them in the dark. They hate surprises. At midday, he unwraps a cloth bundle and offers you a slice of soft cheese and a strip of quince jelly. You sit beneath the fig tree, eating in companionable silence. Birds chirp above. A lizard watches from a stone wall, then decides you're too boring to bother with. You know, Marcus says slowly, when I was your age, I wanted to be a sailor. Dreamed of Phoenicia, Alexandria, all the places I'd never seen. Why didn't you go, you ask? He smiles, small and tired, because the trees asked me to stay. You look out over the low wall to the rolling green beyond groves, vineyards, the shimmer of sea. You wonder if your old world ever asked you to stay, or if you were just passing through without roots. Later, he sends you to the storage room with a bundle of herbs tied in twine. Hang them over the amphory, he says. Keeps the rats from getting philosophical. You laugh, and he gives a rare, full smile. Good. You're not too serious yet? That'll help. By the time you return to the grove that afternoon, your fingertips smell of mint and crushed sage, or your shirt is stained green, and your mind feels like it's been gently stirred, like oil settling after a press. You've learned to graft, you've learned to listen,
and perhaps, just a little, you've begun to remember how to stay. Rain arrives just as Marcus predicted.
You wake to the soft percussion of droplets on terracotta tiles and the earthy scent of wet stone. The air is cooler, heavy with moisture, and the distant olive groves seem blurred at their edges, cloaked in a gentle veil of mist. There's no urgency in the villa this morning. The world has agreed to move slower. Your tunic is slightly damp from where the roof leaked in the corner overnight, but it doesn't bother you. The clay floors feel cool underfoot as you step into the courtyard, where rain gathers in the impluvium like a shallow, rippling mirror. Lucius leans against a column, arms folded, watching the downpour. The trees are drinking, he says, so we'll stay dry. He gestures for you to follow. Come. There's still work to be done, if you don't mind getting a bit of bean dust on your toes. You do not mind. In a long, covered portico along the eastern wing of the villa, tables have been set out for rainy day tasks. The air here smells like damp wood and old garlic. You settle in beside a few others around a large woven tray filled with fava beans, still in their thick, downy pods. Tertia shows you how to shell them with a practiced twist. Flick the seam with your thumb, then pop them like you're coaxing a secret, she says, grinning. Every bean's got a story. As you work, the rhythm becomes meditative, the snap of pods, the clatter of beans in the bowl, the occasional squeal of delight when someone finds a twin bean nestled in one shell. Livia names hers. Sylvanus insists this will curse the stew. The rain continues steadily, soft but unrelenting. Outside, the paths are puddled and the olive leaves shimmer, their silver undersides flashing in the wind. Someone strings twine across the portico to dry damp tunics. A cat curls up on a warm tile beside the brazier, entirely unconcerned by history or weather. After an hour, the boy who plays the flute, his name is Kaio, you finally learn, pulls the instrument from the folds of his tunic. He begins a gentle melody, hesitant at first, then confident. It's not perfect, but it's soft and sad in a way that suits the day, and the music curls between the pillars like smoke. Flavia sighs. That tune always makes me miss something I've never had. You know exactly what she means.
Later, you're sent to help mend some of the villa's roof tiles. This is not glamorous work. It involves clay, sticky fingers, and balancing precariously on a ladder made of olive wood and wishful thinking.
You're paired with a carpenter named Brutus. Despite the name, he's gentle as a sponge cake. He hums constantly and uses tools as if they're extensions of his hands. As he lifts a tile and shows you how to patch the crack with resin, he tells you stories.
One time, he says, a lizard lived under this tile. Would come out every afternoon and stare at me. Never blinked. I think it was judging my work.
You chuckle. He nods seriously. Good foreman. Never said much, but always watching. The resin smells sharp, almost citrusy. You smooth it in place, press the tile down, and adjust its angle so water will run cleanly into the gutter channel. Every detail has purpose here, even in the rain. By the time you're back on the ground, your sleeves are soaked, your hands gritty, and you're smiling. Brutus slaps your shoulder. You're a decent tile monkey. Maybe in another life, eh? You think about how many versions of yourself you've lived. Office worker, commuter, screen starer, and now roof patcher on a Roman estate. Somehow this one feels more real than the rest. Back in the portico, lunch is laid out on reed mats. Hot lentil stew with leeks and herbs, a coarse barley cake, and slices of dried apple soaked in honeyed wine. It tastes like warmth itself.
As you eat, Marcus the Elder ambles by and tucks a sprig of rosemary behind your ear. Keeps away melancholy, he says, or bees, depending on who you ask.
After the meal, you help sort bundles of dried herbs and stack them by type sage, bay, hyssop, and a few you can't identify by name, only by smell. You find one bundle tied with a red string instead of twine. What's this, you ask? Wormwood, Tertia replies. We use it to keep moths away and curses, just in case. Outside, the rain begins to soften into a gentle drizzle. The olives will be happier tomorrow, and so, you suspect, will the people. You walk through the villa, the lamps lit early against the grey sky, the air filled with the scent of wet earth, warm food, and wood smoke. In the garden, Droplets bead on fennel fronds. The chickens complain less.
And you feel settled.
Not stuck, not trapped. Just placed like a tile repaired, a pod opened, a branch pruned. Placed exactly where you are. The rain has passed. The morning sky opens clear and fresh, pale as milk, with wisps of mist still clinging to the low slopes. The air smells of wet stone and clean leaves, what Marcus calls the land's exhale. Today is market day. You wake early to the clatter of amphorae being loaded into carts and the urgent bleating of a goat who clearly didn't ask to be woken this early. Lucius is already at the gate with a ledger in hand, overseeing the packing of jars and crates like a general preparing for campaign. Only this campaign is against bad roads and dishonest fishmongers. "You'll come with us," he tells you, tucking a strip of parchment into his sleeve. Time you saw how the oil speaks once it leaves the trees. You climb into the cart behind a plodding mule named Alba White with one grey ear and an attitude that suggests she remembers every bump from the last trip. The road is uneven, bordered with poppies and wild chicory. And as the wheels creak forward, the villa fades behind you, framed by olive groves shining in the early light. The landscape unfolds slowly, low hills with vineyards terraced into their sides, fig trees poking up like inquisitive heads, stone walls stitched through fields like forgotten maps. You pass other carts on the road, nodding to their drivers, a man hauling dates from the southern coast, a woman balancing baskets of dyed wool, two boys arguing over whether cypress or pine burns longer. After nearly an hour, the road curves upward toward the oppidum, the hilltop town where the market sits. From a distance, it looks like it grew straight from the stone red-tiled roofs clustered together, narrow lanes winding like vines. The market is already alive when you arrive. It's a din of languages and smells Latin, Greek, Punic, even a bit of rough Gallic shouted from a spice vendor. Smoke from roasting fish mixes with the sweetness of candied almonds. You pass a stall where citrus peels dry in the sun, strung like garlands. Another sells pottery painted with dolphins and lions. Children dart through the crowd chasing each other with date palm fans. You help unload the amphorae, each one sealed with wax and stamped with the villa's mark, 3 olive leaves within a circle. A cloth canopy is stretched over the stall. Lucius arranges the jars with the kind of precision usually reserved for temples.
Presentation, he says, makes the oil taste better.
You hand a sample jar to a merchant in a saffron-coloured robe. He dips a reed in, swirls it, and lets it drip onto a bit of bread. He chews slowly, thoughtfully, then smiles. It sings, he says, and offers 3 bronze coins more than Lucius was asking. You see, Lucius says to you, even the oil wants to be admired. Between customers, you explore the market. At one stall, you taste dried figs, stuffed with crushed walnuts and honey. At another, a woman sells murra parites, carved drinking vessels made from agate, each one as unique as a fingerprint. You pause at a bookstall, marvelling at scrolls written in Greek and Latin. One title catches your eye, Hesiod's Works and Days. The merchant lets you touch the edge of the parchment. Want to read it, he asks. You shake your head a little too quickly. He shrugs. No rush. Books wait better than people. As the morning deepens, the light grows sharper and the market more crowded. You return to the stall to help with sales. wrapping jars in wool scraps and tying them with twine. One customer asks if the olives were grown with music. You pause, then say, "Not music, but stories." He seems satisfied. Lucius exchanges 3 amphorae for a small box of saffron, a wedge of aged cheese, and 2 bolts of wool-dyed cloth. "Oil is gold," he says, running his hand over the folded fabric, "but gold stains, oil feeds." You break for lunch behind the stall bread still warm from a vendor's hearth, cheese, sharp and crumbly, a bit of apple wine in a goatskin flask. You eat in the shade of a stone wall while merchants argue good-naturedly over the proper way to dry anchovies. Flavia passes by, balancing a jug on her shoulder. She winks. "Try not to spend all your denarii on spiced nuts." You grin. You hadn't even realized she came.
As the day wanes, the crowd thins. You help load the cart, which is lighter now, but richer in a different way. The road back is softer somehow, as if the earth is pleased with the day's barter.
The sun is low by the time you see the villa again, its white walls tinged gold in the fading light. Alba the mule lets out a loud, dramatic sigh and stops at the gate without being told. Lucius claps your shoulder. You did well. Markets show you what the grove never will. You look down at your hands, still faintly smelling of wax and saffron. You think of how the oil changed faces when it changed hands, how it carried the story of the trees into other kitchens, other homes. The grove is quiet when you pass it. The trees stand watchful and still. The scent of wet earth still clinging to their roots. And you wonder what part of you has been bottled and sealed today. The next morning arrives with a sky so blue it feels rinsed. Clouds have vanished, and the sun rises sharp and clean above the hills, waking every vine, every leaf, every stone. You spend the first hour helping Lucius unload the cart from yesterday's market, a task made more pleasant by the curious crowd that gathers to see what he's brought back. A bolt of indigo-dyed cloth is unwrapped with quiet awe. The saffron is handled like a sacred object. Even the cheese is sniffed like a mystery. Afterward, Lucius pats your arm. "You've seen where oil goes," he says. "Today, you'll help with something that stays." He leads you to the workshop behind the main villa, less a building than a covered space with walls on 3 sides and a thatched roof. Inside, baskets in various states of repair, coils of dried reed and willow, bundles of hemp twine, and a scattering of wooden pegs, knives, and half-finished tools. Here, you meet Decima, the villa's weaver and general mender of things. Her hair is streaked with grey, her voice warm and wry. "I'm the last step before the fire," she says, lifting a broken-handled sieve. "If I can't fix it, it becomes kindling." She shows you how to repair a harvest basket, a wide, shallow type used to carry olives. The bottom has split in 2 places and several reeds are fraying. She wets the replacements in a bowl of warm water and hands you a curved awl. "Reeds are like people," she says. "Some will bend, some will snap. Most just need soaking first." You begin slowly, weaving in new strips, threading them between the old like stitching fabric. The reed makes a soft creak-creak sound with each loop, satisfying and rhythmic. The scent is sweet and grassy, with an undertone of earth. You can tell who made a basket by the pattern they use, she explains. The tight spiral, the double knot, the left-handed twist, it's like handwriting. You glance at the tools hanging on the wall, each one different, worn by its owner's hand. A chisel with a thumb groove worn deep, a spindle smoothed at the grip. None of these were mass-made. They evolved with use, with purpose. They've absorbed stories through skin. Declimer shows you a small, flat tray woven from pale reeds. This one, she says, was made by a man who claimed he once braided hair for Queen Cleopatra. Told everyone that. Swore it on his mother's urn. Was probably lying. You both laugh. In the basket in your hands begins to take shape. You don't realize how long you've been working until your fingers ache in that satisfying, used-all-day way. She hands you a flask of cool water and a handful of raisins. Trade, she says. You give me a fixed basket. I give you sticky fingers. Later, she shows you how to twist hemp twine from loose fibers. It's slower than you expect. You roll it between your palms, over and over, and the fibers bind into a rough but surprisingly strong cord.
As you work, you ask Decima if she ever wanted to do something else. "Oh, I did," she says without hesitation. "I wanted to be a playwright in Rome. Travel from villa to villa with a troupe of actors, wear stage paint, and drink bad wine."
You blink. What happened? I fell in love with a man who thought chickens were smarter than actors. Turned out, he was right. She ties off the cord and smiles, not wistful, but content. And baskets don't forget their lines. Around midday, a boy brings you both lunch lentils with coriander, slices of pear soaked in vinegar, and honey, and a thick wedge of barley bread. You eat in the shade of the workshop, feet dusty, hands calloused, and belly full. Nearby, Flavia arrives with a cracked crate of oil jars. You help her carry it in. She nods toward the half-repaired baskets and the coiled reeds. "Careful," she says. "You stay here long enough, you'll start fixing people." Decima laughs and already has. Look at those fingers less lost now. You glance down. She's right. The hands that fumbled with shears and spilled olives on your first day now move with quiet purpose. Still clumsy, perhaps, but no longer foreign.
"Before you leave," Decima presses something into your hand, a tiny woven charm, no bigger than a coin, made of 2 reeds twisted together.
"For luck," she says, "or at least for patience." You thank her, tucking it into the fold of your belt. Back in the grove, the afternoon stretches quiet and warm. You find yourself studying the harvest baskets with new eyes, not just as tools, but as stories held together by knots and will. You sit under your favorite tree and unwrap a piece of twine, slowly recoiling it the way Decima taught you. The wind stirs the leaves above you. An olive drops and lands softly in the grass. You pick it up, roll it in your fingers, and think this one could feed a meal, flavor a dish, light a lamp, or wait here, untouched, for another day. Everything here has potential, and so you suppose, do you? Afternoon deepens into that golden stretch of time when the light thickens and slows. Shadows soften, and the world begins to exhale. The workers drift into quiet tasks, sorting, mending, washing. And today, you're sent to the lower shed with Brutus the carpenter. There's a large, splintered olive wood gate to be repaired, but that's not your job. Yours is more humble and, you quickly learn, much more intricate, repairing the handles of harvest baskets and reinforcing their reed seams with simple cross-stitch twine. The workshop is warm with the scent of sawdust and drying herbs. Bees drift lazily in through the open slats. Brutus hands you a wooden needle, blunt and worn smooth, and a ball of twine the colour of straw.
Every stitch is a promise, he says, without looking up. If you're going to make promises, best not to rush them.
You settle on a low bench and begin. It's awkward at first, threading twine through rough reed, pulling just tight enough but not too much. Brutus demonstrates once, silently, then leaves you to it, trusting your hands to learn by doing. From across the workshop, you hear the occasional creak of wood being bent over steam, the tapping of chisel on knot. You find yourself falling into a rhythm pierce, pull, loop, breathe, again. As you work, you strike up a quiet conversation. Brutus tells you how each basket form has a name: Spira for the coil, Nassa for the fish trap, Arca for the harvest bin. He points to a narrow, deep one by the window. That's for almonds. The curved lip keeps them from tumbling out. Learned that after losing 20 bushels down a hillside. You imagine the almonds bouncing away like tiny drums, and he laughs before you can even smile. It was loud and tragic. He shows you a wide reed mat that's been stitched and restitched, its corners darkened with years of sun. That mat's older than I am, he says. Used in every pressing since my father's father. It smells like oil even when it's dry. You bend over your work, carefully threading the twine again. There's satisfaction in it, a simplicity that doesn't feel simple at all. Each knot, each stitch, makes the basket strong again. Reliable, useful, seen.
At some point, Flavia passes by the open door, pauses and leans in.
Still stitching your way into history, she asks. Slowly, you reply,
That's the only way that works, she says, and moves on.
You notice a length of dyed thread among the spools and ask about it. Brutus picks it up, it's deep red, nearly black in the low light. From madder root, he says, used to mark the baskets that carry wedding offerings, or the ones made by lovers. You blink. Lovers. He shrugs. Well, baskets are useful. So are promises. Sometimes they come together. You return to your stitching, wondering how many hands held this needle before yours, how many stories were mended along with the reeds. At mid-afternoon, a boy named Rufus arrives with a crate that's come undone. It smells faintly of olives and beeswax. You and Brutus examine the damage, and he walks you through the steps of a simple wood, join how to use a bit of twine and peg to bind the corner until it holds. As you work, he hums a tune, something wordless and soft, like a lullaby meant for tools.
After it's done, he inspects your knots. Strong, he says. Ugly, but strong.
You grin, like Alba the mule. He laughs, loud and full. Exactly. You stack the finished baskets carefully, each one lined with cloth to keep the reeds from warping. Brutus pulls a carved stamp from his apron and presses a small mark onto the base of each, a half circle with a single dot.
My teacher's symbol, he says, still learning under it.
You trace it with your finger. It feels like a quiet inheritance. Before you leave, he hands you a short length of twine, already coiled, with the ends looped and knotted like a bracelet. Every craftsperson here wears one, he explains, not for show, just to remember what we've made. You tie it around your wrist, the twine rough and familiar now.
As the sun sinks lower, you step outside into the golden light. The sky glows with that peculiar Sicilian hue, the kind that blurs memory and dream. The villa hums with quiet life. Chickens scratch near the wall. An oil lamp flickers near the bathhouse door. In the garden, Livia hums to the bees.
You walk along the edge of the grove, your new bracelet snug on your wrist, and feel your hands stiff, slightly blistered, and utterly your own. You've stitched something today, not just baskets, but a little more of yourself into this place. And you think not every mark needs to be written to last. The day has slipped into dusk, and the air is laced with the unmistakable scent of laurel smoke and roasting chestnuts. Something's different tonight. There's a charge in the air, a sort of soft excitement. You follow the flow of movement toward the central courtyard where torches are being lit and wreaths of bay leaves strung over the lintels. Flavia finds you there and grins. It's Saturnalia's. Eve, she says. Or, more accurately, the villa's version of it. You've heard the name in passing, Saturnalia, the Roman festival of plenty and reversal, where roles blur, gifts are exchanged, and the world remembers to laugh. Here, on the villa. It's a smaller affair, less about gold coins and more about goat cheese, music, and a blessed night off from work. Someone places a laurel crown on your head. It's scratchy and smells like bitter green. Don't look so serious, says Sylvanus, pushing a fig into your hand. Tonight, even the olive trees get to dance. In the courtyard, the usual workbenches have been cleared. Clay lanterns shaped like animals flicker along the walls, a boar, a dove, a fish with eyes too wide. Tables are laden with bread rings dusted in sesame, dates stuffed with almonds, wheels of cheese drizzled in honey, and tiny bowls of meritum, a garlicky herb spread that clears your nose and your soul in one bite. The mood is bright but unhurried. A few people sing off-key. Someone's passed around a jug of diluted wine too many times, and now a former shepherd is reciting a dramatic version of a chicken chase as if it were a Homeric epic. You sit beside Flavia and Caio, who's carving stars into a strip of soft wood. He hands you a small one. For your room, he says, so the night doesn't forget you. You thank him and slip it into the fold of your belt, another charm for the growing collection. As torches flicker, a small circle forms around the fire pit. Marcus the Elder sits on a stool carved from a tree root, a goblet in one hand, and a laurel crown slightly askew. Time, he says, for stories. You expect a tale of gods or distant wars, but instead he begins with a quiet story about a lost cart, a stubborn mule, and a family who found their way home by following the trail of spilled olives. The gods may be immortal, he says, but mortals are more creative. Laughter echoes gently across the courtyard. Then, with a theatrical sigh, he recites a few lines of Virgil, slow and deliberate. The Latin is thick in your ears, but somehow comforting. A language shaped for echo. The words blend into the background as someone plucks at a lyre nearby, soft and dreamlike. You find yourself swaying a little, not quite with the music, but with the rhythm of the night. Everything around you feels slower, gentler, as though time itself has taken off its sandals to sit beside the fire. A girl no older than Livia performs a dance she's clearly practiced for weeks. It's full of spinning and precise foot taps, and when she finishes, there's applause, not loud, but sincere, like the rustle of leaves in a warm wind. Tertia arrives with something warm wrapped in cloth-roasted chestnuts, seasoned with salt and herbs. She hands you one. It's too hot to eat immediately, so you cradle it between your palms, enjoying the contrast against the cooling night.
You know, she says, we used to write wishes on bay leaves and toss them in the fire.
Does it work, you ask? She shrugs. Depends on whether the smoke listens. You take a leaf from a passing wreath and press it between your fingers. You don't write anything, just close your eyes and think of a wish that doesn't need words. Then quietly, you place the leaf into the flames. It curls and disappears, leaving only a scent you'll remember for years. The fire crackles. The lyre plucks again. Someone hums. You lean back against a basket and let the heat sink into your bones. And as you sit there, full, warm, wrapped in a strange but gentle celebration, you realize that not a single person has asked where you're from. Not because they don't care, but because here, who you are is how you carry water, how you mend a mat, how you listen to olives press into gold. You sip from a clay cup. Someone's replaced the wine with something spiced cinnamon, clove, and maybe a little too much rosemary. It burns in a nice way. Above, the stars have arrived in quiet procession. Clear, sharp, a little closer than usual. You count them until you forget what comes after 6. The fire pops. A wreath tilts off someone's head and falls into their lap. There is laughter again.
And you feel it, that rare thing.
Belonging without performance. Rest without retreat. A quiet joy that doesn't require an audience.
Just you. Here. Now. And maybe tomorrow too.
The morning after Saturnalia arrives gently, as if the sun itself is still rubbing sleep from its eyes. The villa is quiet, not the usual bustle of tools clanking or roosters announcing themselves too early, just a peaceful hush, broken only by the occasional creak of a door or the distant splash of water in the courtyard basin. You wake slowly. Your wreath of laurel has fallen beside your straw pillow, slightly wilted. Your limbs are pleasantly sore from sitting on hard benches and laughing more than you're used to. It's a good soreness, a sign of having lived. Lucius appears mid-morning, his voice softer than usual. "Light duties today," he says with a hint of a smile, "but you'll want to meet our guest first." You follow him out to the grove's edge, where a figure stands beneath the shade of a tall olive tree, tall and cloaked, a travelling satchel slung over one shoulder, and a staff worn smooth by many roads. She arrived before dawn, Lucius explains, a healer from the south. She's bartered her herbs in these hills for years, always when the moon's thinning. The woman turns as you approach. Her hair is streaked with copper and silver, her eyes sharp but kind. Around her neck hangs a leather pouch, and from her belt dangle small clay jars, each sealed with wax.
"I'm called Naraya," she says, her voice low and even. Your steward tells me you've steady hands. I could use another pair.
You nod before you realize you're doing it. She sets up beneath the pergola outside the kitchen. Her workspace is a scatter of mortars, cloth bundles, and dried herbs with names you've never heard: Santolina, Myrtus, Silphium, the last spoken in a whisper, as if even the name carries weight. Your task is simple: help grind and mix, measure and wrap. She shows you how to crush fennel seeds with a flat stone, then pour them into warmed oil to make a tonic for digestion. Each motion feels ceremonial, measured, deliberate. You ask where she learned all of this.
From my mother, she says, and her mother, but also from fever, from toothaches, from aching joints. Pain teaches well.
You help clean a wound on a young goat that wandered too close to a briar patch. The cut is shallow, but Noraya treats it with care, washing it with vinegar, then packing it with a paste of honey and crushed thyme. "She'll forgive the briars," she says, rubbing the goat's ears, "but not if we ignore the sting." Flavia arrives with a request for a sore throat remedy. Noraya prepares a syrup from boiled figs, honey, and a touch of vinegar. As she works, she hums a low, winding melody with no chorus and no clear beginning. You listen, hands sticky from wrapping a jar with beeswax cloth. Is that a healing song? She raises an eyebrow. No. Just keeps the fig syrup from burning. There's laughter nearby. Kaio tries to swipe a fig from the pot and gets his fingers tapped with a spoon. You suspect he's done this before. The second time. Nerea gives him one for honesty. She says, "By midday, the table is filled with wrapped bundles and sealed jars. Some are labelled with simple symbols: a spiral for stomachs, a sunburst for fevers, a crescent for sleep. You realize there's a language here you can almost read, even without words. Noraya hands you a small jar. For you, she says, a balm of bay leaf and marigold. Good for burns and dreams. You accept it carefully. It smells of sunlight and crushed leaves. In the afternoon, a shepherd brings a lame ewe. You help Noraya clean its hoof, pack it with pine resin, and bind it with cloth soaked in wine. The shepherd leaves with a nod and a half smile. No coin changes hands, only thanks. Later, as you walk together toward the grove, Noraya points to one of the older trees. That one's hollow, she says. Split by lightning 20 years ago, but it still bears fruit. You touch the bark. It feels warm in the sun. How? She shrugs, because it was meant to. You sit together in the shade, not speaking, just watching the wind move through the branches.
Eventually she stands. I'll leave before moonrise. The hills whisper better when I'm alone.
You walk her to the road. She presses a dried sprig of rosemary into your palm. For remembrance, she says. And then she's gone, cloak swaying, jars clinking softly, fading into the road like a story never told the same way twice. You return to the grove with the scent of herbs still clinging to your fingers and a tiny jar warming in your pocket. You feel lighter, not healed, exactly, but threaded into something older, something wise. You think of all the ailments you never named: restlessness, forgetting, the ache of too many voices, And how, here, even the simplest things, a balm, a fig, a song, seem to know what to do with them. The sun slips lower, casting the grove in that golden, whispering light you've come to crave. Your sandals crunch softly on the earth as you walk the path you've now taken so many times past the sloped hill where the grapes fatten, past the bent cypress that always leans a little farther than it should, and into the olive trees. This evening, you're not there for work. You carry no tools, no basket, just a bit of barley bread, the balm from Neriah nestled in your belt, and the wood-carved star Caio gave you in your palm. You want to sit with the trees, just to be with them. You find your tree without looking. It's the one with the split in its trunk, the one where the roots dip like the folds of a resting hand. It feels familiar now, not owned, not claimed, just known. You settle at its base, the bark rough against your back, and let yourself breathe into the silence. A bird calls nearby, 3 notes, sharp and clear. A donkey brays faintly from the direction of the stables, followed by someone's half-hearted shh. Then the grove quiets again. Flavia finds you not long after. She walks with a stick in her hand, dragging it along the soil like a lazy brushstroke. When she sees where you've landed, she smirks. I should have guessed, she says. That tree doesn't let just anyone sit there. She lowers herself beside you and hands you something wrapped in linen. Inside, slices of quince, poached with cloves and honey, soft and fragrant.
I was going to eat it all, she says, but then I thought you'd just look lonely with your sad bread.
You both eat slowly, without conversation, the way you might drink in music or sunlight, and the sweet fruit melts against your tongue. The cloves leave your lips warm.
Eventually, she points to the tree's lowest branch. Want your name there?
You raise an eyebrow. Carved, she says, already taking a small blade from her belt. Lots of us did when we first started. Before we had calluses. You don't have to, but you've stayed longer than most. You hesitate. Something in you resists. The old world you came from, valued leaving no mark. Just footprints in passing, always in motion.
But this world is different. Here, staying means something.
You nod. She takes the blade gently to the bark, carving carefully, respectfully, just your initials, nothing more. The grooves are shallow, just enough to catch shadow and memory. When she's done, she steps back and tilts her head. There, she says. Now it knows who's listening. You thank her, not with words, just a small smile. The sun dips further. The sky bleeds soft purples and deep golds. A breeze stirs through the branches and scatters a few olive leaves into your lap. You don't move them. Flavia rises. I'll leave you to it, she says. But don't fall asleep out here. Tertia says the owls will start charging rent. You laugh, and she disappears down the path, her stick tracing one long, winding line behind her. You lean back again, listening to the tree creak softly in the wind, the way an old door sighs when no one's looking. You press the wood star against your chest.
You breathe.
You think about everything that's happened. The olives, the oil, the pressing, the baskets, the ink, the string, the figs, the laughter. The way each day didn't demand meaning but quietly offered it anyway. In the fading light, you whisper a soft promise, not to stay forever, but to return somehow, in some form, even if it's just to remind a tree who was kind to it. The grove grows darker. A single bat flits overhead, silent in its work. And for the first time in what feels like a very long while, you feel completely, absolutely still.
As if the world has finally exhaled and left you in the hush between.
The next day begins with a stillness that feels earned. No pressing tasks, no errands, no urgent voices will, even Lucius, always brisk, moves more slowly through the villa grounds. The sun rises without hurry, casting a soft, amber warmth across the grove. You spend the morning gathering olives, just a few stragglers, plump and stubborn, clinging to the upper branches. Livia helps you, balancing barefoot on a stone wall as she stretches toward a cluster of fruit.
Last ones are the sweetest, she says, popping one into her mouth and wincing dramatically. Still bitter? They lied.
You laugh and toss her another. She catches it without looking and grins. Better. Later, you help Caio gather dry twigs to build a small fire pit near the eastern wall. He's planning to roast chestnuts, but halfway through his plan is overtaken by a detour involving mud, 2 chickens, and a confused goat. You rescue the chestnuts before they burn. He promises you 60% of his gratitude. You sit together on the wall, eating warm, slightly smoky chestnuts, and watching the clouds drift. They remind you of sails.
I think Caio says that the sky has paths too, just slower ones.
You nod. It's not the strangest thing you've heard since arriving. In fact, it makes perfect sense. By mid-afternoon, you walk the familiar path to your tree. The initials Flavia carved yesterday already feel old, settled. A few ants march beneath the letters, oblivious to their significance. You sit and begin weaving a bracelet with leftover twine, nothing fancy, just muscle memory now. The motions come easily, like breathing. Over-under, loop and pull. Tertia passes by and hands you a folded cloth. Thought you might like these, she says. Inside are slices of dried apple, still slightly sticky, sprinkled with cinnamon.
I didn't ask for these, you say.
You didn't need to, she replies, already gone. The scent of pressed oil lingers faintly on your tunic. You realize you've stopped noticing it most of the time. It's just part of you now, like dust in the folds, like the way you tie your belt without thinking, like the way you check the angle of a tree's shadow without meaning to. Flavia finds you later in the grove, walking with purpose. I forgot to give you something yesterday. She presses a small piece of fired clay into your hand. It's a token, a simple charm stamped with the villa's sigil, 3 olive leaves in a circle. The same mark stamped on the amphory you helped pack for market. It's not for trade, she says. It's just so you remember where your feet have been. You run your thumb across the smooth surface. It's imperfect. The edges are slightly uneven. The stamp is off-center, and it's perfect. That evening, the courtyard glows with lantern light. No festival, no occasion. Just people sharing food and stories like any other night. But there's a weight to it, a soft awareness that nothing lasts forever, and that perhaps this, too, is a kind of harvest. Lucius pours a small cup of wine and offers it to you without words. You accept. He raises his own cup, slightly, then drinks. Tomorrow, he says, we plant barley, and next week we begin pruning again. He doesn't ask if you'll still be here. You don't say if you will. Later, as the stars emerge, sharp and still, like ink dots on parchment, you find yourself once more beneath your tree, your charm tucked in your belt, your bracelet on your wrist, your fingers still faintly stained from twine and pressed leaves. You lie down and feel the earth below you warm, solid, familiar. The cicadas begin their chorus. An owl hoots from somewhere up the hill. You think about the press, the tool shed, the market noise, the herbed cheese, the story of the basket that never broke, the way the oil caught the sunlight as it poured from the mat. And you think quietly, without words, of how lucky it is to have known the rhythm of this place. Not just the trees and the tasks, but the people, their laughter, their rituals, their slow, human kindness. You close your eyes.
And you rest.
And now, as the night deepens and the grove grows still, your body softens into the warm hush of sleep. You lie beneath the stars, with olive branches swaying above like ancient, slow-dancing shadows. The earth is firm beneath you, familiar now, no longer strange or foreign, but something your bones recognize. Your breath matches the rhythm of the trees. Inhale, exhale, the same cadence you've learned from the press, the baskets, the winding paths, a rhythm older than memory, older than words. In the distance, a donkey brays once half-heartedly and falls silent again. A nightjar trills, and then nothing. Just wind, just starlight, just you, folding slowly into the fabric of this place. The last scent on the air is olive wood, smoke clean, a little sweet, and the faintest trace of crushed thyme. You feel your limbs grow heavy, but not in weariness, in contentment, as though the world has said, you've done enough. Your mind floats gently now, drifting from trees to stars to nothing at all. There's no urgency, no next, no need to remember where you came from or where you're going. You're simply here.
Safe.
Still, and gently forgotten by time.